Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. The Alberta government offered an update on the E. coli outbreak in Calgary, which has left 25 children in hospital. A special memorial procession took place in Lethbridge this week, honoring the fallen firefighters here in our city. And as Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre wrapped up his party's convention in Quebec City, he says the biggest need for Canadians right now is hope.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. The Alberta government offered an update today on the E. coli outbreak taking place in Calgary. Officials say 231 people, many of them children, have been infected with E. coli this month at 11 daycare centres. 25 children and 1 adult remain in hospital. Health Minister Adriana LaGrange says her government is on top of the situation.
And while our frontline workers are caring for these symptomatic and sick children, our public health experts are investigating to determine what happened and how to stop an outbreak of this magnitude from ever happening again. That work is underway, and we are working with Alberta Health Services to determine the exact source of the contamination. We know that the source is very likely linked with the shared kitchen, but we do not know what in the kitchen caused it at this time. This information will be an important piece to the puzzle on how to move forward.
Now, the Alberta NDP has demanded a full inquiry into the E. coli outbreak in Calgary as a horrible inspection record of the kitchen which served the daycares has surfaced, including reports of cockroaches that were allegedly found. The province says it is making our streets safer by bringing in stricter bail protocol. Officials say the new legislation will also include targeted prosecution units to address violent crime in both Calgary and Edmonton.
Teams of Crown prosecutors with various areas of expertise will go after crime in Alberta's largest cities, especially in matters involving violence and targeting repeat offenders. These prosecutors will be tasked with familiarizing themselves with the downtown communities in Edmonton and Calgary and the types of crimes that are being committed. They will also be a key point of contact for law enforcement on files involving repeat violent offenders who are making our downtown communities unsafe to work, live, and do business. For these units to work effectively, we will make sure that they have the proper resources and the tools to prepare effective prosecutions.
The investigation continues into a shooting in our city. Lethbridge police say the incident occurred around 2:25 in the morning on Sunday in the 900 block of 2nd Avenue South, just outside of Hudson's Tap House. Fortunately, there were no injuries. Police are asking for any witnesses of the shooting to come forward by either calling Crime Stoppers or the LPS at 403-328-4444. A 37-year-old Lethbridge man who was previously charged with voyeurism and harassment of a female jogger now faces new charges. Lethbridge police say Neil David Fox now faces charges in connection with an incident in which he allegedly approached a 15-year-old girl on her bicycle asking her for sex. Police say he also exposed himself to a 54-year-old woman who was just minding her own business sitting on her porch. Fox has been remanded in custody and will be back in court on September the 18th. We remember those who lost their lives during 9/11, and on Monday morning, members of Lethbridge Fire and Emergency Services also paid tribute to 11 firefighters who died in the line of duty here in our city. As BCN's Micah Quinn explains now, firefighters were honored with a memorial ceremony beginning with a procession through the downtown core.
First responders from Lethbridge marched from Fire Station Number 1 to Southminster United Church for a special memorial service honoring 11 Lethbridge firefighters who have passed away in our city's history. During the ceremony, it was also mentioned that first responders face a growing list of occupational hazards while on the job.
Cancer is a serious side effect of fighting fires. carcinogens in everything that we have in our homes today are real hazards, and unfortunately more and more firefighters are dying annually because of this. So today is just a way of showing appreciation, saying thank you, and keeping awareness to how dangerous our job can be.
According to staff within the department, there are 189 paramedic firefighters that work in Lethbridge.
We also have, I think, about 30 to 40 dispatchers as well that are involved with all this too, and they're obviously included in this. They suffer lots of losses as well too, and they sacrifice just as much as the men and women on the street. It's important to remember and to give back to those people and their families that they're not forgotten, and it's important to us to celebrate them and to let them know and their families that their sacrifice doesn't go unnoticed.
For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Still with our firefighters, they're gearing up for the 9/11 Memorial Stair Climb, which is taking place September 24th at the Melcor Centre. The goal is to ascend and descend 110 stories, which is the equivalent of the height of the World Trade Center towers before they came crashing down following the terrorist attacks 22 years ago.
One of our opportunities that we are given is to do a firefighter stair climb that replicates the 911, how far some of those firefighters in New York climbed. We replicate the same kind of process. We'll wear a lanyard around our neck with one of the firefighters that day out of 343 New York City firefighters that gave their lives that day, to kind of remember them, sacrifice them, and it's another great way to raise some money for our charities as well.
For more information about the stair climb, make sure you check out our website, bridgecitynews.ca. Well, we enjoyed lots of sunshine and nice seasonal temperatures in Lethbridge once again today. Jeanette Rocher is in now with a quick peek at the forecast. Jeanette, we should see mid-20s for most of the week.
Oh yeah, it's going to be mid-20s, then high 20s, and even into the 30s by the weekend, Hal. So yeah, it's still behaving like summer out there, and we're even going to see a UV index of 5 tomorrow. A few clouds tonight with an overnight low of 14 degrees, which is way higher than seasonal, and west winds at 20, gusting to 40 km per hour. Same thing for Wednesday. We could see those gusty winds with a high of 25, and it will be getting even warmer than that as we move into the weekend. I'll be back later in the show to give you all those details. Hal?
Great. Thanks so much, Jeanette. Meteorologists say they expect a high risk to lives and property from damaging winds and flooding across much of Nova Scotia due to Hurricane Lee. The Category 3 hurricane is around 900 kilometers north of Bermuda, packing winds of around 185 kilometers an hour. Lee is forecast to make a turn to the north on Wednesday, which will likely slow its progress as it moves over cooler waters. It could hit Atlantic Canada as a weak hurricane or tropical storm. The death toll from the Moroccan earthquake has now surpassed 2,900 people. Villagers are searching in the rubble for family members. This is the deadliest earthquake in more than 60 years for the North African nation, as rescuers continue to race against time looking for survivors. Search teams from Spain, Britain, and Qatar were joining Moroccan rescue efforts following Friday's 6.8 magnitude earthquake. State TV is reporting that not only have 2,900 people been killed, but more than 2,500 others were also injured. During the closing of the G20 summit in India, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says Canada will continue in its unwavering support of Ukraine and its war with Russia.
Not only is Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine criminal and unacceptable and killing thousands of people, it's also creating energy and food insecurity around the world. This week, I continued to advocate for collective action to hold Putin accountable and to secure a just and durable peace that starts with Russia's immediate withdrawal from Ukraine. Canada will never recognize the results of the ongoing sham elections held by Russia in Ukraine. People like Putin mistake being reasonable for being weak. He is dead wrong.
Federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre wrapped up his party's convention in Quebec City with a battle cry of "Bring it home." Poilievre says what Canadians need right now is simply hope.
Hope is something that you feel, but it's hard to picture it. So let me paint a picture for you of students laughing and walking down safe streets to class. The distant drumming of hammers driving nails through Canadian lumber into yet another beautiful new Canadian home. shopkeepers sweeping clean storefronts at the end of another day, waving to seniors heading home with a car full of groceries and change in their pockets. As daylight fades to night, kids are heard pleading for 10 more minutes of street hockey before bed, and then quiet. And a young couple sits on their front porch, soaking in the summer warmth. A Canadian flag hanging gently but proudly from the front of their house, with a cold drink in one hand and a paycheck in the other. They look into each other's eyes in a way that can only say, the hard work paid off.
The United Way of Lethbridge in southwestern Alberta kicked off their 2023 community fundraising campaign this week. As part of the event, for the first time, the organization held a Pull the Bus initiative where teams had to pull a city bus 75 feet down 6th Street South. All the funds raised go into supporting United Way programs and its support of nonprofits.
United Way supports nonprofit charitable organizations in Lethbridge and southwestern Alberta, and we support their programs to help 3 different pillars, which is poverty to possibility, all that kids can be, and healthy people, strong communities. And so under that umbrella, we support different charitable organizations that will help basically help people get out of poverty and support those types of causes.
That looks like a lot of fun. The executive director of Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Lethbridge, Jen Visser, says they feel very privileged to receive so much support from the United Way.
We're one of the longest relationships the United Way have, and that's not just in Lethbridge, that's across Canada. Having support from the United Way means that we can provide programs to children in Lethbridge and surrounding area with a volunteer mentor, and that just for us, if we couldn't do that, we couldn't provide that program. So stuff like this is really great for our community to see and be involved in and know that every dollar you give to the United Way has an impact in our community.
The United Way community fundraising campaign will run until December, and the goal this year is to raise $296,000. Youth One has officially launched an expansion of its site, which includes a new after-school sports program. The initiative is aimed at organizing pickup sports for kids. Officials say it was developed after there was a need for children who wanted to play sports but either didn't have access to them or couldn't afford to play them.
It was a need that we were asked, and so we tried to fill that. It gets us really excited because we know that youth really thrive when they have opportunities to engage in sport, and it gives them that social context to like engage with their peers. But then we try to provide a safe place for that to happen as well. So when we bring in our volunteers and our team members, we set up a space where anyone can come and play and enjoy whichever game we're playing.
The program caters to kids 11 to 18 and will be available Monday through Thursday from 3 till 5 p.m. The Royal Gala in our city has raised over $1 million as part of a fundraising campaign for the YWCA Lethbridge and District. Now new this year is a partnership between the Y and Grassroots Realty Group, which will be hosting the YWCA Gala on November 28th at the Agri-Food Hub and Trade Center. Video journalist Micah Quinn has those details.
This event brings in a lot of people from around the area that are allowed to see, what kind of programs we offer at the YWCA.
Staff with the Lethbridge YWCA told us what the fundraising dollars from the gala will go towards.
Previously, the event focused only on Harbour House, but we do have a lot of other incredible programs at the YWCA, including Harbour House, our Hestia Youth program. We've got our Safe Visitation program. We've also got our Amethyst project. So this gala will go to fund all of those programs and support where it's necessary at the YWCA.
Stats Canada says 2 in 5 women will experience domestic violence in their lifetime. Officials with Grassroots Realty said it was a no-brainer to be able to partner up with the YWCA for this important initiative.
I sit on the board of directors with YWCA, so it was very important to be able to continue to provide these funds for these programs, as well as just noticing that there is a deficit in the community of fundraising for YWCA and knowing that there has been some changes in the funding provided by the government.
According to the Lethbridge YWCA, the organization has been a registered society since 1951, and the group helps serve over 6,000 individuals per year. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
There were some areas in Lethbridge that dealt with a power outage on Monday. Many areas on the north side of the city, including us right here at Bridge City News, dealt with a blackout for just over an hour. Fortunately, our generator allowed us to regain power while city crews dealt with the issue. City officials say 404 customers were impacted by the power outage on both the north and south sides of the city. They say the issue was mostly caused by wildlife, likely a large bird which flew into a power line. A new environmental science lab was recently launched by Lethbridge College and Livingstone Range School Division. The lab will be located at the Peaks Collegiate Campus in Coleman, Alberta. Staff with LRSD say the lab will be used by kids grades 7 through 12 all across the division in a wide variety of ecological spaces, which is perfect for environmental science programming.
It's equipped with state-of-the-art, I would say, equipment to be able to do some of the work needed for the dual credit program that we've done with Lethbridge College. So it's a 27-foot trailer, and it's equipped with microscopes, televisions, all the pieces you'd need to do sampling, to do that sort of work, to be able to do the work for ecology, botany, and those sorts of things. So.
Very cool. The lab took about 10 months to complete and was made possible thanks to a $100,000 grant from the Alberta government. Regional officials in the central Okanagan say BC Hydro crews have completed most of the recovery and restoration work on areas hit hard by the McDougall Creek wildfire. Officials say hydro crews worked through the weekend, replacing more than 400 power poles and around 27 kilometers of power lines. They say the work involved 125 personnel and included the replacement of 66 pieces of equipment. They say, however, that more work needs to be done before people can return home, including restoring water and gas services, removing dangerous trees, and dealing with hazardous materials on public property. More than 400 wildfires continue to rage across British Columbia. Praying for more rain in many parts of BC. Well, not a lot of rain in our region, just a few clouds and very warm today. The mercury will be climbing even higher later this week across much of southwestern Alberta. A full look at the forecast is coming up. You know, the first day of fall is coming up September the 23rd, but there's still some time to enjoy the beautiful summer temperatures across much of southwestern Alberta. Jeanette Rocher is in now with all of the weather details. Jeanette, if we think it's warm now, wait until the weekend. It'll feel even more like summer.
Oh, wait till the weekend is right, Hal. Especially Sunday will be right up there at the 32-degree mark. But as for the rest of the week, we're looking at mainly clear conditions, lovely conditions. High of 25 degrees Wednesday, down to 22 on Thursday. High of 27 on Friday, up to 26 on Saturday. 32 on Sunday and 22 degrees on Monday as we round out that 7-day forecast. Now, according to the almanac, the average high for this time of year, 21, average low 6 degrees, 32 was our high temperature. That happened back in 1953. And in 1949, look what happened. We were sitting at the chilliest day, which was -5 only. Sun rose this morning at 7:03, sunset this evening at 7:52 p.m. We are looking at 12 hours and 49 minutes of daylight. So we're now under that 13-hour mark. Okay, fairly sunny conditions on the west coast tomorrow, high of 20 degrees in Victoria. Sunshine, fog patches dissipating in the morning. Same thing for Vancouver. Vancouver high 19, but looking more like 22 degrees inland. Also a humidex of 25 inland. Edmonton, 30% chance of showers early in the morning. Hazy conditions in the afternoon, 20 to 40 winds. High of 21, 22 for a high in Calgary with mainly sunny conditions. In Saskatoon, looking at cloudy conditions with 30 km/h winds. High of 23 degrees, 24 for a high in Regina, 30% chance of showers. Winnipeg, sunshine, 30 winds, and high of 19 degrees. As we get to central Canada, sunshine, and Toronto, high of 19 degrees, 20 winds. Ottawa looking at 30% chance of showers, 21 for a high there. Lots of rain expected in Montreal tomorrow, looking at 10 to 15 millimeters and a high of 19 degrees. Atlantic Canada, let's talk about that for a little bit. Atlantic Canada is bracing while a Category 3 hurricane moves across the Atlantic. So Hurricane Lee will start moving northward tomorrow and further enhance the tropical air mass over Atlantic Canada, and it could increase the risk of heavy rainfall over the maritime provinces on Thursday and Friday before approaching. And it looks like the forward motion of the storm could slow. While doing so, winds would decrease the intensity would drop below hurricane strength, and it would also be considered a post-tropical storm at that point. So it should be weakened before reaching Newfoundland and Labrador. But as for Fredericton, tomorrow we're seeing a risk of thunderstorms late in the afternoon. Halifax, 60% chance of showers or drizzle. High of 21 in Fredericton, by the way, 22 for a high in Halifax, 23 for a high in Charlottetown. Charlottetown also looking at that 30% chance of drizzle, changing to 60% chance of showers by the afternoon there. And St. John's, periods of rain and drizzle in the morning, and then 60% chance of rain and drizzle by the afternoon. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
There was some concern on social media that WD-40 would no longer be made available in Canada after Ottawa imposes new restrictions on the compound next year. New regulations in the Canadian Environmental Protection Act are aimed at reducing VOCs, or volatile organic compounds, which the lubricant apparently has. VOCs are considered pollutants that contribute to the formation of smog. Company officials with WD-40 said that their products moving forward will comply with the new regulations and will still be available on store shelves in Canada next year. Apple unveiled its iPhone 15 today. The showcase at Apple's California headquarters comes as the company is in the midst of a mild slump that has seen its sales drop in 3 straight quarters. Today's unveiling was aimed at giving people more reasons to purchase the technology trendsetter's marquee product. Now, the price for the iPhone 15 starts at around $799 US, while the 15 Plus starts at $899 US. German automaker BMW says it plans to transform its factory in Oxford, England, which produces the legendary Mini, to produce nothing but electric vehicles. The move would apparently protect thousands of jobs at the site, where vehicles have been made for more than 100 years. This comes after the British government approved a multi-million-pound investment into the project. It is a vote of confidence in Britain's beleaguered auto sector as it struggles to compete amid a shift to electric vehicles and challenges created by the country leaving the European Union. Now, here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was up 40 points on the day to finish at 20,223. The Dow was down 17 points to 34,645. The S&P 500 was down 25 on the day to 4461, and the Nasdaq was down 144 points to 13,773. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up $1.50 to $88.79 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 14 cents to $2.75 US. Gold was down 2 cents to $19.1365 US an ounce, and silver was down a cent to $23.07 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $9.74 per bushel, barley's at $7.40, canola's at $17.10, and corn is at $9.02 per bushel. Live cattle October contract was down 8 cents to $184.15. Feeder cattle were down 90 cents to $255.33, and lean hogs October contract was up $2.73 to $85.28. The Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours to $73.79 US.
Recapping one of our top stories, the death toll from Friday's Moroccan earthquake has now surpassed 2,900. Villagers are still searching in the rubble for family members. This is the deadliest earthquake in more than 60 years for the North African nation, as rescuers continue to race against time looking for survivors. There are also reports that more than 2,500 were also injured, many quite seriously. The recent trip by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his entourage was a complete disaster. Now, that's according to political reporter and Sun columnist Brian Lilly, who will explain why shortly. When you see news happening in your community, be sure to drop us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. And if you missed any of today's local stories, be sure to visit our website, bridgecitynews.ca.
Here's today's Bridge City News community calendar. Streets Alive Mission is hosting the Ride for Refuge fundraising event Saturday, September 23rd at Henderson Lake Park. This family-friendly event allows for your choice of a 10 or 20 kilometer bike ride or a 5 kilometer leisurely walk around beautiful Henderson Lake. Enjoy the great outdoors, raise donations for a great cause, and win fun prizes for the whole family. Plus, enjoy a free dinner afterwards. All funds raised will go towards supporting Streets Alive Mission's life recovery programs. Sign up online at rideforrefuge.org/Lethbridge. Discover a new activity that you love. All are invited to Give It a Try events hosted by the Lethbridge Sport Council. It's a great opportunity to try your hand at a new sport like climbing, badminton, handball, and more. Events are free to attend. Register in advance by visiting lethbridgesportcouncil.ca/program/give it a try. And that's your Bridge City News Community Calendar.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau went to India for the G20 summit, but ended up staying a couple of days longer than he wanted to. Now, to chat about the PM's recent visit in India in more detail is political reporter and Sun columnist Brian Lilly, who joins us once again from Toronto. Brian, I understand that there were some technical issues when it comes to the Prime Minister's plane.
Yeah, this wasn't a case of the way most of us might do something where you've got to go somewhere for work and you say, oh, maybe I can tack on an extra day for some sightseeing, have a little holiday tacked onto a work trip. Trudeau wanted to come home. The trip to India wasn't good, but they had a problem with their plane. It turns out that they needed parts. They weren't able to get them locally in India. They sent for them in Canada. Well, at first, actually, they sent another plane to go pick them up. Then there was a problem with that plane. It was diverted to an airport in Europe. I believe it was diverted to London. Then the part showed up. They repaired the plane, and he took off. At one point, according to Indian media, the government of India did offer them, the Trudeau contingent, one of their planes, and they turned it down, saying, we'll wait for our own. What? An odd decision by the PM, given how bad the trip was and that he was desperate to get back to Canada because tomorrow the Liberal Party caucus retreat starts in London, Ontario, and he very much wants to be there, or at least that's what he says. Maybe he doesn't, given how nervous Liberal MPs are these days. But a bad end to a bad trip, and with Pierre Poilievre saying feels like everything's broken in Canada, that now includes the PM's plane, which, by the way, should have been replaced a long time ago. And it simply hasn't, because no PMs wanted to take the hit of being the one that spends the money for something that the country actually does need.
Now let's talk about why the trip didn't really go well, according to plan. Now, apparently Prime Minister Justin Trudeau had a few run-ins with other world leaders, but you say his spat with India's Prime Minister Modi is driven by domestic Canadian politics. Can you explain?
Yeah, first off, other leaders is a famous shot now of from the Canadian press of Joe Biden getting in Trudeau's face with a finger, just pointing right at him. It doesn't look like a friendly thing. It doesn't look like a joke. Hey, pull my finger. Nothing like that. It looks angry. And Trudeau looks like he's upset at whatever Biden is saying to him. It's not a good exchange between the two of them. There were reports coming out of the meetings that Trudeau was somewhat isolated from other world leaders. But the issue with Modi goes back years. It goes back to his first trip, the one where he took all the different outfits. He was changing all the time. He was considered an embarrassment to Canada by the media in India and by many in Canada as well. And so that trip didn't go well. That's the one where he took a guy who was convicted of attempting to murder an Indian politician on Canadian soil. He took him to an official dinner or event in India. So that was the first trip. Modi is already skeptical of Trudeau because he is not denouncing and is close to the part of the Sikh community that supports a separatist homeland for Sikhs called the Khalistani movement. Trudeau is in some ways right to stand up for that group of people in this country because they're opposing things Modi's doing. India is supposed to be a secular state. Modi's cracking down on Sikhs. He's promoting Hinduism, which is the majority faith. And so there's a bit of tension there. But Trudeau isn't finding the right balance. They're standing up for human rights in the community, and there's not condemning people who call for Modi's murder on Canadian soil, which the Prime Minister should be doing. India is a major trading partner. And the fact that Trudeau isn't getting this balance right is putting us off. We're not a major trading partner for India. But they are, I think, now the sixth largest economy, projected to be the second in a few years' time. We're shrinking. Their economy is growing at 6 to 7% a year. We're at 1 to 1.5%. We need to be latching on to India's growing economy to help our own. But Trudeau is playing domestic politics to gain votes from the Sikh community over this. and that's putting Canadian jobs and Canadian exports at risk.
So, Brian, while our Prime Minister was having his allegedly second disastrous trip in India, Tory leader Pierre Poilievre was having the time of his life and the kind of weekend that Trudeau wanted to have when Poilievre was in Quebec City. How well did his party's policy convention really go?
I don't think it could have gone better. And I was speaking to a Liberal who said, I don't remember a political party having a good weekend like that over a convention in quite some time. Oftentimes these conventions go off and there might be one story out of it, maybe two. But there were so many different storylines going on here. The convention went off without a hitch. He's well received in Quebec. His polling numbers are going up across the country, including in Quebec. While Poilievre's there, he starts taking shots at the Bloc Québécois, saying, tying the Bloc to Trudeau's carbon taxes and cost of living increases. There was his wife, Anna, giving an incredible speech, flawless in both English and French. Pierre's speech, well received. Brian Mulroney, Stephen Harper, Peter MacKay, all the different strands of the Conservative movement praising the new leader. I mean, he couldn't have had a better weekend. It was really good for him. And it showed that the Conservative Party is rejuvenated. I mean, contrast that with the Liberal caucus retreat, which we'll talk about in a minute. And it really is a tale of two cities. I'm sure sitting there in New Delhi, feeling isolated, Trudeau would have loved to have been in front of a roaring, enthusiastic crowd of his own supporters, like Poilievre was. Instead, he was stuck in India.
Now, Brian, there was a lot of media coverage, however, of so-called controversial policies passed at the Conservative Convention. Let's talk about some of these so-called controversial policies. Which really stood out the most, and will they actually, in fact, become party policy?
Which is controversial depends on who you are, where you live, what your outlook is. In Quebec, one of the controversial policies is defunding CBC, which Poilievre has long said he'll do, but he just says he wants to defund English CBC. I believe the motion at the convention was to defund both English and French, which he hasn't touched because he says, that it's different. You need to have a French language broadcaster in the country, then they need competition there and so on. So that's one. That's not really going to cause him too many headaches. There were a couple on gender issues that I think some in the media have portrayed as being incredibly controversial, when I think there might be a disconnect between the media and the public. One was on allowing women to have their own spaces, whether it be for awards or sports or various things like that, without people who are born biological males and are saying they're transgendered now moving into those spaces. I think that there is a shift going on where a lot of women, and you're seeing this with some of the sports organizations, the international ones, saying we're no longer going to allow that sort of competition. I think there's a shift there that perhaps our media colleagues are not catching on to yet. On the issue of banning gender-affirming surgery for children, that could become party policy. I don't think Pierre will latch onto that, but even if it did, it wouldn't make a difference. Even if they got in government, they couldn't actually implement that because healthcare is a provincial jurisdiction. So while the federal government regulates things like drugs and therapeutics, they don't regulate surgeries. So that would have to be a province by province issue. So it's something that the party voted on. I'm not sure it'll ever become party policy for the reasons I just described.
Brian, as we were discussing earlier, the Liberals are meeting this week in London, Ontario for their caucus retreat. Do you think cabinet ministers and maybe backbench MPs will be sounding the alarm to the Prime Minister, given the latest polls which show the Tories comfortably in the lead?
Well, they've already started doing that to the media, and there have been stories out about how nervous many of them are, including in the very Liberal-friendly Toronto Star, which had a piece on the weekend that I'm told landed like a thump inside the Liberal Party, that, oh my goodness, things are horrible. We've got to start looking into this. I mean, the polls have been trending this way for months. Now, my warning always to everyone, if you're up in the polls or down in the polls, just remember polls can change, voters are fickle. And so don't run a victory lap yet, don't declare your own party dead yet. But obviously things are not going well and haven't been for a while for the Liberals. And they've got to figure out why. And my view is they're simply disconnected from the average person. At the Conservative Convention, all the talk was about affordability, about making it so that people can buy their own home, bring back that Canadian dream. Jamil Javani, one of the new candidates, he's going to run in the by-election to replace Aaron O'Toole, just east of Toronto. He said that when his parents and grandparents came to this country from different parts of the world, it was they had a dream that you get a good job, you can raise a family, you can buy a house, and that dream's broken now. They're talking about all of this. The Liberals showed up at the Conservative convention warning you can't vote for the Conservatives because they'll ban guns, they'll ban abortion, or they won't ban guns and they will ban abortion, and they don't have a good climate change plan. They were talking about fear. If climate change is your driving issue, you're never voting for the Conservatives anyway. But for most people, something like climate change goes up and down depending on how you're feeling economically. And when you're worried about putting food on your table and a roof over your head and heating your home, guess what? You care less about the climate change plan. This guy is making costs go up. This guy says he'll bring them down. You're going to go with the guy that says he'll bring them down. You're not going to be scared off by, but he doesn't have a good climate change plan. You're going to say, no, he's got a good affordability plan. I can afford to eat again. Those are the sorts of things that drive voters, and the Liberals seem completely out of touch with the way they're trying to attack these issues.
Now, a couple of other issues which are really dominating headlines right now, Brian: housing and immigration. These issues have been linked given the huge increase in foreign students coming to Canada. We're talking about 900,000 of them. And London, Ontario is one of the cities facing a rental crisis right now as a result.
London has a huge foreign student population. Liberal economist Mike Moffat, who lives in London, Ontario, and has been tapped by the Liberals. He went down to their cabinet retreat and spoke to them. He has drawn a comparison. He looked at all the cities and towns with the big populations of foreign students at universities and colleges. London, Ontario has one of the worst mismatches going on. You can't bring in 900,000 people without there being housing for them. And that's what we've been doing. We had a story out of North Bay last week, Hal, of a group of foreign students who are paying thousands and thousands of dollars more than any Canadian student to come to Canada to take courses for better themselves. And they show up and there's no housing. They're living in tents outside of the college campus. That is unreal in this country. So yes, they're going to have to start looking at this. They've tried to have it both ways. They've tried to say housing's an issue, but don't link it to immigration. Then say, well, maybe on the foreign student side. Look, if we're not going to be building, then we can't have this level of immigration. Poll by by Nanos put out this week showed that more Canadians than not now believe we need to lower the immigration numbers. There's been a long-standing consensus on immigration in Canada that it's good. And I think the Liberals are going to break that because on the one hand, they're bringing in record numbers, faster than we can absorb people. They're bringing people in. On the other hand, they're getting in the way of various provinces and their housing plans based on environmental assessment issues. How can you do those two things at the same time? Bring in more people than we can absorb and say, no, we're going to fight you on building housing. It doesn't work.
Brian, last year it was a conspiracy theory that governments backed by a push from the World Economic Forum were trying to get people to eat bugs, insects. Well, now you say the Trudeau government is spending millions of tax dollars to put crickets on our tables?
Yeah, well, full shout out to the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, because when CBC and a bunch of other media outlets were doing these stories last year saying, oh, this is a conspiracy theory, this is not about getting people to eat bugs in the World Economic Forum and the government is nothing, blah, blah. Taxpayers Federation just said, okay, let's look at the grants and contributions. And they found multi-million dollars worth of grants. I think my tally ended up being 9.27 million or something since 2018, going to different companies in Calgary, in rural Manitoba, in Montreal, in London, Ontario. They have the biggest cricket production facility in the world. And all of these are looking at, some of it's for pet consumption, such as the London facility, but they're looking for ways to commercialize crickets for human consumption. There's a company in Montreal that makes energy bars from cricket protein. I'm told they're wonderful. I haven't tried them. And one of them, I think it's the same company, got a grant to try and commercialize crickets going into sausages, steaks, and hamburgers. Oh. Count me out. Give me the foie gras instead. I'm not on board with that. I'm an adventurous eater, Hal, but bugs ain't for me. So it wasn't a conspiracy theory. Is the World Economic Forum pushing the government to do this? I don't know about that, but they do support the idea. And the Trudeau government obviously supports the idea. So, this is happening. It is out there. And, all the media outlets that covered it a year or so ago had to do was go look at where the money was going. And it was going to places that want to put crickets on the menu.
I'll stick with my Alberta beef. Thank you very much. Political reporter and Sun columnist Brian Lilley, thanks so much for joining us today from Toronto.
Thank you.
An assistant professor at the University of Lethbridge and a filmmaker have teamed up to release a film highlighting their work in preserving endangered plant species across Alberta. To give us a better understanding of the journey behind this film, we welcome its creator, Professor Jenny McCune. Welcome to the show today, Jenny. Great to have you on.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Okay, so your movie is called The Quiet Green Creatures. I love that title. It reminds me of a little swamp monster or something, but that's not at all what we're talking about. So maybe tell us, what is the little film about? It's about 4.5 minutes long?
Yeah, it's a little video film that we put together about the research that my students are doing with endangered plants. And so The Quiet Green Creatures is kind of a play on the idea that people often don't think about plants as creatures, but they are. They're a big component of Canada's wildlife. And so I wanted to kind of do something that would be accessible, that people could learn about what we're working on.
No, that's so interesting. What inspired you to create it?
Well, even way back when I was a graduate student, I sort of heard a lot about the importance of communicating your research beyond the academic community and communicating it to the general public. And I went to a little workshop about making these little videos, and I thought, ooh, one day I want to do that.
What a great idea. I love that. And we are in the age of communication and definitely social media and filmmaking. So what better way than to kind of showcase your work there? So how did you originally get interested in plants and botany?
Ooh, that's a great question. I grew up on a farm in Southern Ontario, and so I did a lot of gardening and went on canoe trips in the summer and things like that. But I had a really, really good biology teacher in high school that did a great job with the plant part of it. And I sort of just became fascinated with the plants, and they're different than us, right? They're sort of like aliens in a way. They don't move around like we do, and they don't communicate like we do, but they're living creatures. And so I guess, yeah, it was way back in high school when I started kind of being interested in plants.
Mm-hmm. And there's so much research, it seems, coming out right now about plants and how they, I don't know, like how they interact and stuff. It's really interesting. It's kind of fascinating. But getting back to the film, so in the film, you're basically saying that there are currently plant species in Alberta and around the world that aren't flourishing, right? So what's limiting them from thriving?
Yeah, so in Canada, we have some close to 4,000 different species of vascular plants. And the major reason that some of them are at risk of extinction is because they grow mostly in the southern part of our country, which is also where we like to live and work. And so we've been clearing a lot of their habitat for centuries to make way for our housing, our agriculture, our industry, and things like that. And so in our case, we're working a lot, we're focused on these plant species in Southern Ontario, which used to be about 80% at least covered with forest, and now, depending on what county you're in, is somewhere between 5 and 40%. Yeah. And so they're limited to these little chunks of forest kind of surrounded by, ag fields, cornfields, pastures, subdivisions, and cities. And so that can really take a toll on their ability to thrive, to move around the landscape. And of course, it also comes with other threats like exotic invasive species, changes in the herbivory, like are there more deer around chomping on them, things like that.
Yeah, it sounds like we're almost all competing for the same space right there.
Exactly, that's the thing. And if we can't leave, I mean, it's not just plants; it's endangered animals too. The biggest cause of them being endangered is us taking up more and more of their habitat. So if we can't set aside some for them, we might lose them.
Yeah. So what are the main factors putting these plants at risk? Is it humans basically?
Yeah, I would say it's almost all human caused or things that are linked up with things that humans are doing on the landscape. In some cases, we don't really know why some of them are so rare. So that's one of the things we're trying to test. So with the wood poppy that we're working with, there are only 5 populations in all of Canada. They're all in southern Ontario, but they seem to be able to grow quite well, even in, people have planted them in their garden and they do quite well. So our hypothesis we're trying to test is maybe there is other habitat in the area that's suitable. It's just that they can't get their seeds there because their seeds are dispersed by ants. And so if you think about how far an ant could go, it's probably not going to cross a 100-acre cornfield, to get to a new place.
Exactly. Is there a specific type of plant life that you're currently trying to save, and why?
Well, Southern Ontario, Ontario in total has about 77-ish species of plants that are listed under our Federal Species at Risk Act. So there are plenty to choose from. We're focused on 2 for these trials where we're planting them. One is called the wood poppy and one is called the crooked stem aster. And so we've chosen those for various reasons. One of them being they produce tons of seeds. And so we can get seeds from those existing populations without causing any danger to the population. We wouldn't want to collect seeds from a tiny population that only produces a few every year.
Okay, well, you're an assistant professor at the University of Lethbridge. Are there any plant species around these parts, around southern Alberta, that you're specifically monitoring?
Yeah, we haven't studied any of Alberta's endangered plants. Here in Alberta, most of the plants that are listed on Canada's Species at Risk Act here are grassland plants, of course, because we're in the, down here in the south especially, it's the native vegetation is the grasslands, and those are the things that were cleared to make way for agricultural crops and things like that. So those include things like western spiderwort and the hair-footed loco weed and all these cool little grassland species. We haven't worked on any of those yet. We've done a bit of work in Waterton Lakes looking at the response of plants after the big fire that happened there in 2017. But we haven't focused on any endangered plants here yet.
Okay, and are there plants that are kind of at risk around here?
There's definitely some rare ones, and whether or not they're at risk, some of them definitively are. So I think there's 12 in total that are rare enough and at risk enough to be listed under that Federal Species at Risk Act. Those ones are definitely, on the edge just because their native grassland habitat has been so reduced over time. But then there's others that are just rare and maybe doing fine in a few places, like in the mountains. And, we don't know about very many populations, but hopefully, because they're growing high up in the alpine somewhere, they won't lose habitat, at least not to human development.
Right.
They might face a problem due to climate change if it gets too hot for them.
How do you monitor the growth of these plants, even the ones in Ontario that you're kind of looking at?
Yeah, so the ones that we're monitoring, so we're monitoring the existing populations and we're also monitoring the ones that we plant. So what we do is we mark individual plants, we give them a little name tag basically, and we track them every year. So we measure how tall they grow, how many leaves they produce, how many flowers they produce, and how many fruits they produce. So that gives us an idea of how well they're doing. Are they reproducing? Are they growing really tall? And how does that change from year to year?
Okay, no, that's interesting. Almost like a little report card there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, that's neat. During the process of filming, did your team encounter any challenges?
I mean, field work is always challenging. You know, you're out there with the mosquitoes and the humidity and the rain. I worry. So here, when I have students out in here in the mountains, I worry about bears. In Ontario, I don't worry about bears. I worry about ticks. So ticks carrying Lyme disease are an issue. But while we were filming, I mean, we just had fun. I just had this little GoPro camera that I bought, and I just sort of filmed us as we were walking and planting and measuring things. And I wish that we had been there at the time of year when the wood poppy is in bloom, because it really is a spectacularly beautiful flower when it's in bloom. And in the film, it isn't in bloom, but it has fruits on it, so you can see the fruits, but not the
I
flowers.
saw the little green fruits. They weren't quite ripe yet. What time of year were you filming?
Oh gosh, when was I there? It must have been late June.
Okay. Yeah, it definitely looked summery, a lot, very, very green. Yeah, but it
Yeah.
almost looked a little rainy as well. Yeah, so basically big challenges are like the environmental elements, pretty much.
Yeah,
The
I mean,
climate,
if you're going to be a plant ecologist, you have to be ready to spend all day out in the forest with the
100%.
mosquitoes.
There you
Yeah.
go. Now, this short film communicates the importance of biodiversity. So what do you hope viewers will take away from it?
Well, I always try and raise the profile of plants a little bit. You know, I think a lot of people, when they think of endangered species, they think of caribou or maybe even tigers and pandas and elephants and things like that. But I think it's important to get the word out that, you know, endangered species include these quiet green creatures, these plants. And, you know, people love plants. It's not that we don't love plants, that people fill their houses with house plants and they get into their gardening. And so, just hoping to kind of raise awareness that we also have some plant creatures that we're worried about here and that we're trying to conserve.
Okay, interesting. So what can the average person do about all of this? Like, for instance, are there any specific actions or changes that you hope your audience will be motivated to take after watching the film?
Oh gosh, yeah. Well, I mean, the things that an ordinary person can do, like one thing that I do is I support local land trusts, because they're often the groups that are helping to preserve nice pieces of habitat and so that those habitat pieces won't get developed. So here in Alberta, for example, we have the Southern Alberta Land Trust Association, I think it's called SALTS. You can donate to a place like that. Also, just, you know, supporting designation of parks and protected areas and things like that, and voting for people who support that.
Okay.
But also just getting out and noticing the plants, you know, now with apps like iNaturalist, where you can snap a picture, you can put it on the internet, and you can learn what species it is really quickly, is a great way to learn. Yeah, a great way to learn more about the plants that you have, you know, right in your backyard or in your local park.
Yeah,
you know?
for sure. Do you believe that this film could even spark an interest in the younger generation to gain a better understanding of your field?
Yeah, I hope so. I was saying it's another sort of aspect of it is, you know, having it up on my website as kind of a tool for potential grad students to see, right? Or even undergraduates that might want to work with us. Every summer, we hire undergraduates to come out and be our field assistants. And so it's a way for them to see, you know, what is it really like doing that job? Like, what is it like being out there in the forests for 3 months of the summer?
Yeah, for sure. Now, collaborative efforts are often very crucial in conservation projects, but are you able to maybe elaborate on some of the partnerships and collaborations in your film?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the project itself is not just me. It's a group of collaborators, including the Wilder Institute, which is based at the Calgary Zoo. They are experts in reintroducing and translocating animals, but they wanted to, you know, support us to learn more about using this tool for plants. And then the Nature Conservancy of Canada is a really important partner because they are the ones that have the land that we're working on. So they have these intact forests that we know are going to be preserved well into the future. And then we worked with a First Nations run native plant nursery called Guyana Say, and on the Six Nations Reserve in Southern Ontario. And so they were really important because obviously we were not going to grow 5,000 plants in Alberta and drive them to Ontario. We needed a place to grow them there.
That would have been a movie in itself there, about how you even did that. And then, and then speaking of filming, you mentioned you just had a little GoPro. Did you have another filmmaker with you, or somebody that you kind of collaborated with to help you edit or anything like that?
Oh, absolutely. So, I came back with just this footage that I just gathered, and I was like, okay, here I am at this university that has, a whole new media program. There must be someone that can help me. So I was put in contact with Rodrigo Henriquez, who is the director, and just sort of said, here's all this footage. Here's a script of a voiceover that I wrote.
Okay.
Can you help me?
Do something with it. Help me.
Yeah. And so
Amazing.
he's got his own little company that does that kind of thing. And he was able to edit, splice all the things together, find this great music to put in the background. And I got to be in a studio, with headphones on, doing the voiceover.
Yeah,
So
it was
really
great. Do you plan on doing any more films with Rodrigo in the future?
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah. And we've got more work coming up, both in Ontario and here in Southern Alberta. So it was a great experience. And I think, it's just a nice way to communicate what you're doing in a short, digestible piece.
Definitely. Yeah. It's not like a long documentary. It's just really short and to the point. And no, it was great.
Yeah.
Johnny, thanks so much for your time today. It looks like we're out of time here.
Oh, thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
No, it was great to kind of understand a little bit more about the work that you do. So thank you for that. Jenny McCune is an assistant professor at the University of Lethbridge and a botanist who has worked to protect endangered plant species across Alberta and Ontario, and I guess beyond. So great to have her on today. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks so much for watching.